Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Earth, Sea, Love podcast. This podcast is for and about women of colour and our relationship with nature. Hosted by me, Cherie Mack. The Earth, Sea, Love podcast is committed to exploring the experiences of women of colour with Mother Nature. We want to provide spaces where the hidden voices in the environmental and conservation conversations can explore their relationship with the natural world. Inspired by our time spent outdoors, we amplify the voices of women of colour, our stories, our conversations, interviews, photography, writing, and artwork. We'll be exploring our legacies, histories, and memories which have had an influence and effect upon how we perceive ourselves within the natural world and within the environmental and climate justice movements. Welcome to the Earth, Sea, Love podcast. The Earth, Sea, Love podcast has been made possible by the funding from National Lottery Heritage Fund. Thank you. Hiya, welcome back to the Earth, Sea, Love podcast. I do hope that you're taking care of yourself and that you're feeling good. So, episode 026 with Joanna Henry. Jo. Yeah, this was a really good conversation, which I appreciated. I mean, Jo is a young woman, but her wisdom and the way that she perceives the world and how she moves through the world is remarkable and inspiring. And it was such a privilege to sit down and talk with her about important issues around race, environmental justice, the barriers that we face as marginalised people, disadvantaged people to get out into the countryside, but also where we can actually gain some strength through our connection and reconnection with nature, and how that can foster love for ourselves and for each other. And it was such inspiring. So much resonated with me when we were talking. I even think that we actually went to the same cultural retreat in Italy at different times, of course, and doing different things, but I'm sure we went to the same place. And that was just like, it just, throughout the conversation, I found out so much more about Jo. So many different layers to Jo. I mean, she's a twin. I didn't even know she was a twin. But it was just like peeling away these different layers to get to the core. And the core of Jo, and the core of me, and the core of everyone really, is that burning, pulsating energy. Love. That's what it all comes down to. And to find someone else who thinks that's, to similar ways to me around love and connection and nature and changing the world and changing the narrative. It was just like, oh my gosh, it was so a recognition, a confirming, giving permission. It's all right to be thinking the way you're thinking, the way that you're feeling, that you're actually not alone in this world of having these ideas that love can actually make a difference, that love can change the world. And to hear it coming from someone so young, joyful and welcome, and you just want more of it, basically. So I'm just keeping this intro short and sweet this time because sometimes I do have a tendency to babble on, but I just want you to get to this episode because I love it and I hope you love it too. And yeah, if you've got any feedback, let us know, good or bad. We enjoy anyone who takes the time to reach out and share their views. We do appreciate it. Enjoy. See you next time. Bye for now. Thank you very much for agreeing to be on the podcast, Jo.
That's all right.
And as I start with everybody who comes on, I ask them where they're situated in the world and if they can see any nature outside their window.
Thank you for having me on here as well, by the way. It's a new experience for me. But I am in Essex, in Basildon, if you know it. And I'm just going to look out my window. So I've got lots of snow. Have you got snow where you are?
Yes, we do actually, and which is unusual because with the sea air, it doesn't usually land and stay.
Yeah.
So that's just an indication of how harsh the weather is or how extreme the weather is at the moment. So yeah, so you've got snow and I've got snow, definitely.
Yeah,
so
lots of snow and like a line of trees and in a bit of a residential area. And yeah, it's a bit lots of cars and stuff. It's quite full up with cars. There's not enough space.
Is it a case of we're still in lockdown? We're calling it the third national lockdown. So I don't know about you, but when there's loads of cars taking up spaces, it means that people are actually at home and staying safe. Is that the case, do you think, with all the cars?
Yeah, I mean, you'd hope so, wouldn't you? But I'm not sure that people are taking it as seriously here as they could be, because there seems to be also, like, when you go around, you walk around, there's quite a lot of cars on the road, at least before the snow is there. But yeah, also I think it's just like not so much like I said about a lack of space, when actually it's more people and too many people having lots of cars to their home, really, instead of sharing or space for everyone to have so much.
You were in lockdown. How do you get your nature fix at this moment in time?
So thankfully there's quite a few green spaces around here. If I was in, I can imagine it would be a lot harder if I was in London and in the city and stuff. I really feel for people at the moment who are in that position. But I have a golf course quite close by that I tend to walk through a lot.
Are you allowed to do that?
Yeah, it's public as well, but that's the closest. That and a little park is the closest green space I have. And like everywhere else, as much as there's lots of green spaces, you have to have a car really to get there, and or rely on public transport. And I don't have a car at the moment, so I'm hopping around with mum and sister when I can to go to some nice green areas.
That's interesting that you said that this golf course is also public land. Again, my nearest golf course is at Tynemouth, and that is definitely a private, exclusive space. Definitely wouldn't be allowed to walk across. So that just brings me to mind to the idea of how much of public lands or green areas have been cordoned off, made more exclusive, and people now have membership or pay to use it. Is that a lot of the case where you are then in Essex?
You saying this, it get like, it's one of my frustrations, let's say. There is I think a lot of land in the UK in general has like been like, a lot of the privatised land is also like become golf courses for some reason. I'm not really quite sure why that is, but maybe because it tends to be a more like or historically I think it's been bit more of a richer sport, hasn't it? But I suppose, you do have to pay to. The thing is that these places are open to everyone, but you have to really be able to pay for the transport to get there, to have a car, to like some of the parking fees can be really expensive. And I generally don't really like agree that we should have to pay to access what is like a common good, basically. Well, not even a good, just a common right to land and to being able to breathe fresh air and see the trees, So
yeah, I do share that frustration with you, especially if you think about things like the National Trust or English Heritage and places like that who, okay, there might be some houses there or there might be some historical ruins there, but how they cordon it off and sell it back to us. It's our history, it's our heritage. Well, that, the bits that they want to highlight, and it's sold off to us. And we do. I mean, I've had membership and we do pop in the car and pay the membership if we've got that money, and pay the parking and walk around, and we're like, ooh, and and that sort of thing. And really it takes up a lot of space, the landscape, which should be a common right to roam or to experience. So I take that frustration. And did you say then that you sometimes get in the car with your mum and your sister to go further afield to get to some certain places? You do need a car, you do need transport, or you do need money to get on this transport. So these are just like a number of barriers that are in place for I would say disadvantaged people, and that can be because of money or poverty, but also because of the color of our skin. So I'd like to just ask, how did you get into nature? Was this part of your childhood? Was it part of your family? How they were, their culture, or how you were brought up? Can you remember how you got into it?
It's an interesting question, actually, because I feel like, so when we were kids, like quite young, my mum was taking us to like parks quite a lot and stuff. We'd play in the garden and just be in nature quite a lot. I say we, it's because I'm a twin, that's why I'm just used to saying we, and I also have lots of sisters. But then I would say there was, like, for the most part of my life, I haven't been immersed in it very much. And it's really like, I think because of being a minority in this area, and not really, I don't know, I always had basically a strong desire to kind of want to go and explore more, and to like learn about different people and cultures in the world, and to learn about like the environmental aspect didn't come until a bit after that, when I realised, like, and became very passionate about different social issues, when I realised like how connected the environment was to those social issues and to our own oppression, if you like, and marginalisation and stuff. So I'd say one of the like real turning points was like when I was at uni. I started to become much more interested in like health and sustainability, and like the food that we eat, because I've always really loved my food as well, and wanting to like eat nourishing things. And I went and did some volunteering. I don't know if you've ever heard of Woof. It stands for Woof. Have you heard of it?
It was funny, I heard about Woof when I was in Italy, because we used to have woofers to help them pick the olives. Yeah. So you went, where did you go woofing?
I was actually in Italy as well.
Oh wow, whereabouts?
I split my trip so that I was actually in a few different places. So some just outside of, a few places in Tuscany and a few places outside of Rome. Different types of farms, because I wanted to get like different experiences and different see the different crops. So like one of them I was on a vineyard, and another one I was like on a tomato farm and stuff. So it was really, really lovely. Really nice experience. So Did you say that you also did woofing, or?
I for some reason I always wanted to visit Italy. There was something about the landscape that was drawing me there. And I just found this artist collective that was in Montileone, which is just in Lazio, so just in the hills outside Rome. And they took over an old candy factory to be this artist collective, kept their sustainability by offering artist retreats, but also they had olives, an olive plantation. So you could go there and experience, helping them bring in the harvest, and then taking it to the small pressing place and seeing how it was all created, and bring away your own olive oil to bring home, sort of your thing. It was something that I actively seeked out because I wanted a reason to be there, and not just to have that idea, oh yeah, I'm just going to Italy, but I wanted to be immersed in the culture and the landscape. And then for a number of years afterwards, I was writing retreats with the collective, because they didn't have anything writing. They had photography, they had dancing, they had music, but they didn't have anything offering writers there for a retreat. So we collaborated and offered for a number of years a writing retreat where we took inspiration from the landscape. It was usually in October because it was on the turn, and it was so beautiful then with the different colors and the trees. So so that's just brought it all back. That has, and that was like, I want to say maybe 10 years ago now or more, but it still has a special place in my heart, Italy. Definitely.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because that, I think, was one of the farms that I volunteered at. That's so crazy. The artist collective that you're talking about in Lazio.
It was Uzu. Was it Uzu that we were called? But there was such a lovely family, and you just felt so welcomed in a sense. This worked in with, maybe you're saying, the idea of making those connections with the environment, social issues, health, and sustainability. So you never mentioned what is your family background, because you say, it's interesting that you said, because of being a minority in your area. And I think that is really, really good of saying that. If we think about, I'm skipping all around here, but it's all related. Right. We think about BAME, or how we're usually described, Black, Asian, and minority ethnic. Using minority is an issue for me, because we're not, if we're thinking about the global scale, and if we've been talking about this traveling on the global scale, we are not minority. Black and brown skinned people are actually the majority on a global scale, and using minority is a way of limiting us and keeping us in place to think that we are small and insignificant, and, as you mentioned, can be oppressed and accepted. So I love that you used minority, but you said in this area. And that is interesting. So if you're the minority in this area, why is that so? I mean, it's a case of like, where's your family from, or where were you?
Can't see me, obviously, but I'm nodding along with you as you're talking. I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. I think I like the I don't know if you've ever read The New Internationalist, one of my favourite magazines, but they used the term majority world, which really sits much more with me, to be honest, because you're right, we are the majority in the world, and we kind of like sold this idea of being a minority. But my family heritage is quite complicated. But I have so my mum's white British and my dad is Malaysian. But if you know anything about Malaysia, it's also very diverse. So it has like Indian, Chinese, and Malay influences. But I didn't grow up with my dad. I grew up with my stepdad, who was British Caribbean, and and so my sisters are also Caribbean mixed. So a very diverse family. So you can imagine the looks that we got in this area. And
I just love the richness and the mixedness. So long that has been sold to us as something to be maybe keep hidden or to be ashamed of. Having that richness, well, I call it richness, but you know, there's other words that people use which are so derogatory about it. And I totally get it about those looks when you're going out. Right, I've got that mixedness in me, but then my kids are mixed. But because there's so many different shades going out, people do stare even more so. And you can see that they're trying to make some connection or trying to work it out. But because British society, people don't ask these questions. They'll ask the questions, where do you come from? Some people who are used to saying things, other people will just stare and maybe say something to somebody who they're with, but rather than not say anything to you, they'll just stare and continue to stare and make you feel uncomfortable in your own skin. And I think how we move through society, a lot of it is how we are reflected back by others. You know, that gaze, when people gaze at you. And because of our treatment, we might see that gaze as being a threatening gaze or unfriendly gaze, basically. It's not many times do we have that friendly gaze, if you know what I mean. So when you're out walking in these green spaces, or even close to home or even further afield from home, do you see many people that look like you, or the people that you engage with? Are they usually white people that have this gaze or stare towards you? What is your experiences of being out there and seeing anyone like you or being seen by others?
In answer to the first part, I don't really, other than my twin sister, I don't really see anyone who looks like me. The first time that I saw somebody that looks like me was when I actually visited Malaysia. Yeah, so that's kind of my norm, really. But in terms of the stares, I mean, I feel like if you're used to receiving hostility from people because the way you look, like, it's not, I'm not saying that you were saying this in any way, but it's not anyone's fault that they might, like, any person of colour's fault to then assume that the looks that they're receiving is coming from a hostile place, which a lot of the time it really feels like it is.
I love that you've said that. That is so important. It is,
because we often blame ourselves, don't we? Or we like you can really internalize a lot of these messages and ideas, and like you say, the gaze and not being reflected. You can you internalize a lot of like the hate towards you, when actually it's not about you, it's about the other person, the other people, and the system. So
no, that needs to be underlined. I'm drawing a circle around it, highlighting it, because that is something. And I'm nearly 50. This year I'll be 50, and that is something that I have just in the last few years, I would say, have come to acknowledge and acknowledge to myself that it isn't my responsibility. I'm not going to say it isn't my problem, but it isn't my responsibility. It's not my fault. It's not. That is food for my soul. That
definitely.
Because we do carry it around, and it has been also, I don't know if there is gaslighting that goes on. It's like it's your
definitely.
It's your issue. It's like I've even thought that I'm going around with a chip on my shoulder, that it's like I'm feeling this, but obviously it's my problem, and obviously it always has to come down to race. It's like to hear that and to actually feel that in my body. It's like, it's almost like I'm taking out exhaling a massive breath there. It's like, woof, thanks. Thanks.
Oh no, that's okay. Thank you for also like acknowledging that, because I think it's really important too, and it's an ongoing process, isn't it? And it is really difficult. So like just the first step of becoming aware of these things, and like you mentioned the body as well, and I'm very interested in like how these different like traumas which from my understanding, I'm not an expert in any shape or form, but from my understanding, racism for a really long time wasn't even seen as like creating trauma in the body, as well as different, I think, other forms of oppression. And like, I'm really interested in, like, especially because of my own experiences and how we carry these things in our body and how they manifest and like how they affect us on an emotional and like physical level. These things have like long-term impacts for our health and for our well-beings, and then also create ripples out, don't they, to communities and like, yeah, living in this country. And yeah,
recognize. Talking about that trauma in the body and our health and well-being, you're saying you're interested in it, and how are you working around that or working with it? I know you mentioned about the foods and the stuff that you put in your body, but then also I think this might lead into, because we met through working together on the research project that was coming out of CPRA, Campaign for the Protection of Rural England. It's called the Countryside Charity. Worked with NEF, New Economic Foundation, to explore diversity within the British countryside. And this was not just about diverse on the terms of race, but they were thinking about age and gender and social economic wise. But we were involved because we expressed an interest because we're working with, maybe as individuals or with groups, of getting more black and brown bodies into nature. And they were wanting to do some research, find out about our experience, our lived experience in a sense, see how they could change it to make it more diverse. So this is how we met. So what did you do as part of this research project? That's the first thing.
Well, it was peer research, which was something that drew me to it, because it's much more of a collaborative approach, rather than the kind of typical like power relationships between the researcher and the people being researched, I suppose. Was more about like drawing out, or like not even drawing out, that's not even the type of phrase I want to use because it sounds very extractive, but like amplifying, if you like, people of colour's experience. I don't even really like these phrases. I feel like they're just so singularizing, you know, they're so is it homogenizing, is that a word, you know?
No, that is totally it's something that came out within our group. We were talking about our findings or bringing back to the group about how, because we're using these labels or we're doing it under this title, it does sort of bunch us all together when we are so unique and have individual experiences.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I didn't speak with too many people. I spoke with a couple of people that and it's like meant to be using your own networks for people that you know, isn't it? And what was my experience like? I think it was interesting and challenging at the same time, because there were people that were fairly close to me. I kind of already knew some of what their experiences and the type of things they might mention anyway, but then there were also like surprises and things that I didn't know about people, and a mix of responses. One person who really didn't feel that there was any like racism at play in the countryside, and in, I don't know, even in society maybe. I'm not quite sure if that person really acknowledged it. They weren't born in the UK, so that they also openly acknowledged that maybe the fact that they didn't have to, like, they haven't learned the same cues as maybe somebody who had been born here and had experienced that all the time. And then I had another person that I spoke to that was like the complete opposite, if you like, and saw the environment as very like politicised and something that has its links to capitalism and colonialism, and like right down from who owns the land in the UK and who gets to experience it now and who is excluded. And I feel that there's, like, for me personally, there's a lot more truth in that. How we feel in nature and the countryside, I don't know, these like I've said already, these terms don't really sit right with me, because the first thing I started with when I was talking to people was, what does the environment mean to you? And that was because like just using the phrase nature and environment, it kind of feels like there's this narrative of them being something separate to us, isn't there? And also being like something that's kind of, we're almost carving it out in the way that capitalism has done, you know, and or our language is reflecting that, at least, when actually it's something that exists all around us, even when where there aren't green spaces, that is still nature. It's the, you know, it's like,
you know, I totally get what you mean. And like, I'm sitting here listening, and it's so difficult talking about these things when we only have the master's tools. You know, if we're thinking about Audre Lorde and like, how can you dismantle the master's system if we only have the master's tools to do that? And that is the language. That is the only thing that we've got. It's trying to find the ways to talk about these issues and not have that prejudice or that way of approaching it already built in. You know, as you say, using nature and environment, and that it is almost putting those boxes around it. And yes, this is the environment and this is nature. And also, you know, when you say in the natural world, what do you mean? There's only one world and we're all connected. We've got as part of an extension of our project, we've got Black writers in residence in these places, you know, these organizations, Northumberland National Park, Durham Wildlife Trust, etc., etc. And we're calling this Black Nature in Residence. And part of it is to try and find or explore language so we can marry ourselves with ourselves, in a sense, because when we're saying with nature, it's with ourselves. It's with nature, with ourselves, and with other people, and to reconnect where that disconnection has gone. And I think, you know, I use Black nature because of that lack of that representation of us in nature. Things are getting better. Things are definitely getting better, especially this last year when we have been in lockdown and people are appreciating nature more and experiencing it more, and the diversity of people doing that is broadening. But it's not something new. We've been doing it for generations. If we are honest about it, it just hasn't been, as you said, amplified or recognized or in the media, seen in the media. Do you know what I'm saying? As you just said, you know, the first time you saw somebody that look at you was when you went to Malaysia, and when you're walking out with your twin. And that is because when we think about these things about being outdoors, British countryside, walking the landscape, if we look at the media or the magazines or these outdoorsy publications, we're not there. And they might be looking towards more diversity, but they'll just have that one face, brown or black, that's there to represent the whole of diversity. And we're such a vast and so varied. You know, when you're saying homogenizing us.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree with everything that you've said. Not to sound critical, but you saying about, oh, you know, things are getting a lot better, and I feel like you don't need to say that, you know, like we can still, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels like it's kind of like an add-on in a way to kind of say, like, oh, you know, things that, you know, actually things still aren't right, things still aren't good enough, and that's okay as well, basically. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I hear you, Jo, and I appreciate that too, because that is the way that we are socialized.
Yeah.
We're criticizing, but we have to couch it in a way that, oh, I recognize that we're making advances. I recognize this good work. Yeah. You hear my voice going on because that's how we have to couch it. Because if we come out with that direct criticism, we are seen as not recognizing what's been done, but we are criticized. Do you know what I mean? If you think about what's been going on recently, and have you seen about Country File having a segment on Black Girls Hike? the over 100 complaints that were sent into the BBC saying, why are you highlighting this group? What's so special about this group? There's loads of other groups. Well, yeah, you have you seen that?
I think I heard about it. I haven't seen it, no, but I did. Yeah, I did hear about it. I didn't know there'd been over 100 complaints.
The backlash has been turned around because it just means that the Black Girls Hike have got more followers now of what they do. More Black women know what they're doing and have reached out to them and want to be involved. Yeah, it means that the organization is growing, you know, so that is using a backlash in a positive. Yeah. But the thing is all they were doing was saying, hey, we're here and this is what we're doing. And, you know, when you look at what they say in the program, it's nothing different to what white people out there are already saying. I'm walking because it's for my health and my well-being. It's great to get out there. You know, sometimes I don't feel like getting out. It's the same message that are coming out of white people's mouths, but because it's coming out of a Black woman's mouth, it gets piled on. The individuals get attacked, not a case of listening to the message and saying, hey, I didn't even know that about Black women actually are fearful of walking out their front doors.
Yeah.
That they have to create a group so they can do it together safely. Oh my gosh, I didn't even know that. Oh, that is a sad case of not even having that reflection, not even listening to the message. And you know, that makes me mad. That makes me so mad.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you just gave me permission. Like, I don't have to couch it in things like saying things are changing, things are getting better. I could just say, hey, still a bad case of affairs and need for more improvement.
Definitely don't need to couch it like or change your language from, at least for my benefit at all. I completely what you're saying. I think it's when, you know, you're shining a light on something, isn't it? When you're bringing it to the forefront of people's consciousness, that's like they can't handle it. People find it's those defenses that come up, isn't it? Isn't that what's called like white fragility? I don't know.
The term is all right for me in a sense because it is giving me something to hang on my experience when there wasn't any language there before. I do appreciate this new language, these new tools that I've got in my arsenal. You know, like microaggressions. I didn't know what that was.
yeah, definitely.
But I experienced it, and trying to explain it to somebody who might not be in my shoes, obviously. No, it's only me in my shoes. That does help me to explain. So I welcome these two. I'm all for Becky and Becky Code, but it's when what gets me is when it's, I think it is when some people take offense when you're using that term and get on the defensive, or then when other people get on the bandwagon and use that term to forward their own agenda. That is what I have issue with.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because like language is so important to like being able to. I feel exactly the same. There's so much that I've learned and that I'm still learning. That gives understanding to our experiences, our diverse experiences, because we haven't been able to have the tools and have not been able to put them into words. Then at the same time, that language or phrases or like ideologies can be so easily like manipulated and used in such a way that it adds further fuel to like the complete opposite of what it is that you're trying to do or achieve or to put out there, you know. So it's really difficult.
It's the case of like sometimes when you enter into certain relationships or projects, you have to have hope. You have to have hope that this is going to make a difference or bring about change. But then when you get into it, you find out that it's still the same old game. It's almost, it's triggering again and again of that that trauma that is within our bodies from experiencing racism again and again and again. And, you know, no, there's part of me that just wants to give up and, you know, what's the point? But then there's the other part that does keep that hope and that light alive, and that wants to keep on, as we say, learning in order to share that and to bring about change, not just for myself, but for others.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it is difficult because of the systems that we are operating in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I feel like that's where, at least for me personally, like being able to step away from things at times and to like check in with yourself. And I know it's like thrown around a lot, like the whole self-love stuff, and but it's so important to give ourselves what it is that we need in some way as well, and to like give ourselves joy, and like the things that all of these experiences are like kind of can be denying us at times when we're bogged down in like the difficulties of the world, or like our own experiences of like racism and oppression. But if it's okay, I was thinking to like go back to an earlier point that you had about kind of like narratives and like the environment, and that what I mentioned about it being separate rather than being seen as interconnected. And I wanted to see what your thoughts were and share my own about like what a different narrative would look like.
Oh, please share.
Because for me personally, or put it out there as to what you think. For me personally, I feel that it's really important so talking about how it's affected me in my own life, I feel like the environment has become something that's really connected to me to my own like sense of spirituality, and of which for me is being connected to everything and seeing everyone and everything in you, and vice versa. Yeah, I think that the environment is a like really important way to be able to do that, to like, you know, whether it's like giving love to your plants or like being in nature, tuning into your senses, you know. So yeah, I don't know, I've kind of gone off on a tangent. What do you think?
No, you haven't gone on to a tangent, because when you're speaking, Jo, it's, you know, you mentioned self-love and then you had a little giggle after it, as if it was, you know, something that we shouldn't say, in a sense. That interconnectedness for me with the environment, if I'm using your term, is how I have fostered self-love for myself. Again, it's only in the last few years that I can say that I have self-love, and I say it with pride, because it's something that we are not taught, and it's something that is almost ridiculed or dismissed, almost as if it's like you're being arrogant or vain to say that you love yourself. But it's something, because it's powerful, that is the case. It is powerful because once you say that you are fostering self-love, you are actually getting back to your core, to your true self. And that is where my nature connection helps me and supports me, because I fell in love with nature. I fell in love with the environment. And if you follow that natural conclusion, is like nature and me are one. We are connected. We are the same. Yeah. There's a universe out there and there's a universe inside me. Yeah. So if I love nature, the conclusion is I love myself. You get me?
No, it's true.
And I feel, and you know, all my senses, hear, sense, see, you know, I feel myself reflected in nature. And it's not, when I say that, it's not me in a Black woman's body. It is my, I don't know, my spirit, as you say, it's my essence, My light comes to the forefront when I am walking in the trees, when I am in the sea. I am in me, and I am in nature. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. That's such a beautiful way of putting it as well. Like, that's a really beautiful way of putting it. I couldn't have put it across better myself. Just, that sense of spirit and seeing yourself in nature and being connected to it. And it's really lovely.
And it's not a case I see myself as society sees me. That's it. In those identity checky-bocky things. It's like it is that soaring feeling, and you gave it with that spirituality. It is the spirit, isn't it? It's like, and that's beautiful. That is pure beauty. That is it.
I feel like connecting to that as well. That sense of, I don't know how it feels for you. I suppose it could be different, like lots of different feelings. But for me, there comes like a sense of openness, like an open heart. Like a receptiveness to, like, you have to open your senses to hearing and sound and all of these different things. You have to have a level of openness, don't you? And like, we carry that with us. And like, I don't know.
It's a vulnerability, that openness. Just an example, I know I'm open and I'm in the sea and I'm giving thanks, and then I get out the sea and I carry that openness and vulnerability with me, so that when I come in contact with others, which I will once I re-engage with society, I am still open and vulnerable. And I have seen myself, I'm walking along and my head's up and I greet whoever it is with a smile. And even if they're not smiling back at me, and then even if I'm getting out the sea and people say, was it cold enough fire? Like these comments, or if they just stare, I know that my reaction to them is coming from that openness and vulnerability. Usually if I'm going through society, I'm thinking, right, well, that's a stupid question, or why are you staring at me? I'm defensive. But when I know I've had this experience and I'm open, I am much more willing, is the word, maybe willing to offer that openness and vulnerability to someone else. Reply with a smile, with some joy, with some light. And that's how my circle is. It's a case of like, nature helps me connect with myself, connect with nature more, and connect with others more. It's like that. I'm doing this cycle because it's all interlinked.
Yeah, definitely. It reminds us of our oneness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And our connectedness. Yeah.
And it's connected because there's the energy. It is an energy. That's what it is. And I think the most powerful energy in the world is love. And that is what that's why you have to keep going back wherever you're in. I started with this nature fix, but it is an addiction, and that's why I have to keep going back, because it's feeding my soul, but it's also feeding that love and energy that gets me through the day, the rest of my life.
When you say going back, going back in what way? Where to?
Well, I'm just thinking about going back to the sea.
Oh, right.
Okay. So from, when you say in nature, it's like, where do you feel most comfortable, or what's your favorite spot, or what's your sit spot? Somewhere that you keep going back to, no matter what the weather or the season. So you actually develop that intimate relationship with that being in nature. And I don't mean being, but I mean that being, that living species in nature, because everything's alive, everything has a being.
I'm so glad to hear you say what you said about love as well, because I think that's really nice to hear somebody else say that other than me, because I feel exactly the same. And I don't know about you, when you're quite an empathic person and you are quite connected and in tune with all of these things, you're in tune with your own sense of love, aren't you? That's what it is. And it feels like when you're in a society where there's a lot of, or a world where there's a lot of like destruction, you can feel that love is a very, like, that takes great courage, doesn't it? There's a lot of vulnerability in being able to have an open heart and being able to receive and to maintain that, I think. And that's like, yeah, I often like to like think about this like narrative that's been put out and then twist it on its head, and I feel like love as a weakness is one of those things. No, love is like one of the most powerful forces there is, which is what you just said.
Yeah. Thank you, Jo.
That's okay. Yeah.
But
yeah, it's so important to cultivate, isn't it?
Yeah, you're not alone, Jo. You're not alone. Yeah. So we have nearly amassed an hour here. The final thing I usually ask is, what's your plans for the future? Keep developing your nature relationship connectionness. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because we're still in lockdown, but it doesn't have to be outward plans. It can also be internal plans. So do you have any burning desires that you'd like to share, Jo, that you are moving forward?
Burning desires. Well, at the moment I've been training to facilitate women's circles, which are like where we share stories, and that's something that I feel, I suppose it's connected to nature, but it's not directly connected to nature. But that's something that I'm really looking forward to like going more into, which is why I have a lot of respect and appreciation for what you're doing with this podcast, because there's something so healing, isn't there, and transforming in being able to share our stories and like allow each other to be seen and heard, and to see each other in those stories, if you like. And I think that is part of nature's reflection, if you like. And yeah, I feel like that's one of the things that has brought me a lot of groundedness, and being able to, when we're talking about nature, we're talking about, for me personally, I'm also talking about like the flow, like trusting the process and trusting of life. And I feel like that's something when I'm in tune and go outside, or even when I'm inside and I'm like listening to the different sounds and stuff, and that really helps me to cultivate that sense of presence and like groundedness, and be able to do those types of circles. But yeah, generally, like, just to continue, because it is an ongoing practice, and I think like that in itself is important, to be able to continue to practice that going outside. And like, because before I was somebody that really, I just felt trapped in one place all the time, and obviously because of COVID we have like no choice but to be where we are. And that's kind of, I don't know about for you, but it's given me a bit more of an appreciation of, doesn't matter where I am, the fact that I just have like the air, the water, like, I'm able to see the clouds. And sounds a bit cheesy, but all it gives you a new appreciation of the things that you have around you, doesn't it?
But again, you just imparted so much wisdom there, because you're saying about the process and practice, and we have to keep practicing. And for me, I say my creative practice, but life is and the more that we can practice being present, showing up, and being grounded within our is much more of a guarantee for a happier life, a joyful life, I think. I think. And
definitely.
I'd love to keep hearing about how you get on with the women's circles, because I think that is empowering for the individuals involved, but then also empowering for a women's group, or a women's sisterhood, or women. And to have that is definitely a gift. So I wish you luck with all that, and please keep me informed of how it goes, because I'm definitely interested. And on that note, I will have to say thank you, Jo, for your time and
thank you for yours too.
Your generosity, and definitely that I've felt seen and felt during this conversation. So thank you. The podcast is for women to share their stories and narratives, but there's also the selfish reasons there, and I get so much from these conversations, and they are my medicine also. So I thank you from my heart, Jo.
Thank you too, Sherry. I really appreciate what it is you're doing, and I think it's so important to like it's such a rare chance to be able to like share your experiences, but also capture those everyday experiences of women of colour, and to have the chance to like hear people's different experiences is really powerful and important. So yeah, credit and admiration for what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank you, Jo. But I can't do it without you. So credit and admiration for what you're doing too. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
You take care. All right.
And you too.